Hi, I'm Joel Bond, and these are my locked down life lessons brought to you from Greece. Yesterday, as I was coming back from a hike with some friends and acquaintances of mine that I've made on the island here, I said to them that it will be quite difficult for me to say goodbye when the time comes to leave. When restrictions are lifted, flights are resumed, and I'm able to return to my home in Iraqi Kurdistan, saying goodbye will be, well, a little sad. I've grown quite used to living in a hotel room. I've come to cherish the friendships that I've made here, and I certainly enjoy the beautiful view that I wake up to every morning. Saying goodbye will be a sad farewell. Which made me think of the film The Shawshank Redemption. It's one of my favorite films and possibly one of yours as well. In it, the main character, Andy Dufresne, who is wrongfully accused of a crime, spends nearly 20 years of his life in prison before managing to escape, quite spectacularly. Midpoint through the film, the storyline follows a secondary character named Brooks, who was incarcerated as a young teenager and receives parole late in life in his 60s. He has spent the majority of his life in prison, and when he finally has freedom on the outside, he finds it difficult to adapt, to adjust, and ends up committing suicide. It's a horrible and sobering point of the film, where another character, Red, says that Brooks was institutionalized. He says these prison walls are funny. First you hate them, then you get used to them. Spend enough time in here, you come to depend on them. By contrast, Andy Dufresne's character manages to adapt to life on the outside quite well, and to a certain lesser extent, so does Red's character when he gains freedom. So what's the difference between Andy's character and Brooks? Why does Andy succeed on the outside where Brooks does not? I think the main reason is that during time in prison, Andy found meaning and purpose for himself. He built a prison library, helped other inmates gain their secondary school education, and essentially created meaning in spite of his prison time. Plus, he never lost hope for the path that his life was on. In Viktor Frankl's book, Man's Search for Meaning, he interviews survivors of the Holocaust. And in it, he discovers that those who managed to adapt the most to both life in the concentration camp and certainly to life after concentration camp were those who were able to ascribe some sense of meaning to their own lives, and those who retained hope for the future. He said those who really survived were not those who could put meaning to the senseless actions of others. No, they were those who were able to put meaning to their own lives. Another Holocaust writer, Elie Wiesel, writes about a scenario in Auschwitz where several of the inmates decide to put God on trial for crimes against humanity. They declare God guilty and in the space of a single breath then proceed to go on with the evening prayers, which seems a bit of a contradiction, and yet they did so because ritual mattered, and faith in God, guilty or not, is a form of hope. In the film Shawshank Redemption, when Andy is confronted with despair from several of his inmates, he says, there are places in this world not made of stone, that there's something they can't get to, they can't touch, that's yours. He's talking about hope. Now, it's a horribly unjust and unfair comparison to put 30 days of Netflix binging against Auschwitz or prison incarceration. But there's a fundamentally shared concept in these ideas, in that there's a risk to becoming institutionalized in our newfound quarantines. That this mandatory deceleration that we're in, as my younger brother has stated, will become all too comfortable. But those who balance meaning for their lives in the present and hope for their lives in the future will be the ones who are resilient enough to adapt to whatever new life comes our way on the other side of this. So I hope wherever you are in the world, quarantined or locked down, that you will find meaning for your life now and have hope for the future. We'll see you tomorrow.